There is a moment, after the wound has been delivered, when the world seems to pause. The insult, the betrayal, the injustice, it hangs in the air, and you are left with a feeling that is as heavy as it is sharp. It is the feeling of being wronged, and in that space, a powerful, almost seductive thought begins to take shape. A thought that promises to restore balance, to soothe the sting of humiliation, and to reclaim your power. It is the thought of revenge, but have you ever stopped to wonder why the desire for revenge feels so good to even think about? Why does the mind, in its darkest moments, find such a strange satisfaction in imagining the downfall of someone who has hurt us? The truth is, revenge is not just an act. It is a psychological phenomenon, a deep and complex drive that reveals as much about us as it does about the people we wish to punish. And if we are honest with ourselves, most of us have felt its pull. It can come in a fleeting fantasy while stuck in traffic, or it can settle in the chest like a cold stone, a companion that offers both comfort and poison. On the surface, revenge seems simple. Someone takes something from you, your dignity, your trust, your security, and the only way to get it back is to take something from them. It is the primal logic of the eye for an eye. But psychology shows us that this logic is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how our emotions work. We feel that revenge will be a reset button, a way to erase the shame and bring the score to zero. We tell ourselves that once they suffer, we will be free. But here is the twist that we rarely anticipate. The fantasy of revenge is often far more satisfying than the act itself. Think back to the last time you rehearsed a scene in your head. You imagined the perfect comeback, the public humiliation of the person who wronged you, or the moment they finally realized what they had lost. In that fantasy, you were in control, you were powerful, and you felt the rush of vindication. This is because the anticipation of revenge activates the brain's reward system, pumping out dopamine, the same neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and craving. It is a euphoric, addictive feeling of power. It is a secret pleasure we allow ourselves, a way to regain a sense of agency in a world where we were made to feel powerless. We feel it on a personal level, and we see it play out on a global scale. Historically, revenge has toppled empires and sparked wars. It is a collective force as powerful as any ideology. However, the problem is not the desire itself. The problem is that the desire is built on a promise that reality cannot keep. The act of revenge rarely delivers the emotional closure we are so desperately seeking. In fact, it often does the opposite. Let's walk through the psychology of what actually happens. The initial moment of retaliation might bring a flash of satisfaction, but it is almost immediately followed by a new set of complications. You don't just hurt the person who hurt you. You hurt their family, their friends, and their place in the world. You create a new injury, a new victim, and that victim's story will now include you as the villain. You become entangled in their story, forever linked to the very act you wanted to escape. The person who wronged you is now a person you wronged. The boundary between justice and cruelty blurs, and instead of separating yourself from the pain, you have welded yourself to it through this single, definitive act. This is the deep paradox of revenge. It is an attempt to sever a connection, but it ends up creating an unbreakable one. It is an attempt to move on, but it anchors you to the past. This is why many who finally get their revenge do not feel liberated. They feel hollow. They have completed a task that was supposed to bring peace, but they are left with a strange silence and a deeper understanding of their own capacity for cruelty. The catharsis is fleeting, and the emptiness is profound. It is like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. And this leads us to a far more uncomfortable truth. What if the desire for revenge is not actually about the person who hurt you at all? What if it is about a war you are waging with yourself? When you are wronged, there is a fracture in your sense of self. You might feel foolish for trusting them, weak for being vulnerable, or worthless for being discarded. The person you are most angry with is not the betrayer, but the version of yourself who was naive enough to be betrayed. In this psychological framework, revenge becomes a desperate attempt to punish that inner self. By punishing the person who exposed your vulnerability, you are trying to prove to yourself that you are not that weak person anymore. You are trying to kill the part of you that was fooled. But you cannot kill a part of yourself. You cannot punish your way to self-esteem. So, if revenge is a trap, what is the way out? It is not forgiveness in the way we have been taught to think of it. It is not about offering absolution to the person who hurt you, or pretending that nothing happened. That is a kind of spiritual bypass, a shallow grace that ignores the deep wound. True freedom lies in a more radical act. It lies in refusing to define yourself by the injury. It is the conscious choice to write a story where the person who wronged you is a footnote, not the main character. It is turning the spotlight away from them and back onto yourself. Revenge, after all, is the ultimate act of giving your power away. It is saying, my happiness depends on your suffering. It makes your enemy the center of your universe, the axis upon which your emotional state spins. So, what if you broke that axis? What if you chose to be indifferent to their story? This is not about becoming a passive person who lets others walk all over them. It is about a profound reclamation of agency. It is the realization that the strongest position is not to fight every battle, but to choose which battlefield you stand on. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone who has wronged you is to let them become completely irrelevant to your life. The ultimate revenge, if you want to call it that, is to become so invested in your own growth, your own peace, and your own future, that the person who hurt you no longer has the power to affect your reality, your absence from their life, your lack of reaction, your success in spite of them. That is the message that speaks loudest. It is the quietest and most profound kind of power. The reality is, carrying the weight of revenge is a burden you were never meant to bear. It consumes your energy, your time, and your mental space. So the question we are left with is not how do I get back at them? It is a far more important one. Who do you want to be in the story of your own life? The person who was defined by their enemies, or the person who transcended them? If you enjoy exploring the hidden depths of human behavior and the quiet battles we fight within ourselves, consider subscribing to Thoughtic. It is a space for those who want to understand the mind, not just to know themselves, but to free themselves. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt the pull of revenge? And what did you learn from it? Let's talk. Until next time, take care of your mind.